Hello there. Welcome into a Thursday edition of the show. Let me fix this camera for you. There we go. Glad to have you. Whether you are watching on our social media platforms at Extra Sports 1300, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, or whether you're listening to the show on air, online, or through the Extra Sports 1300 app, which is sponsored by Diversus Health, Mental Health, and Well-Being for All. And I do have a veritable cornucopia of sports topics to discuss with you. And I would like for this to be a discussion, two-way conversation. You can text or call into the show at 719-247-1313. Tonight, week 5 of the NFL begins. A game that I think is more interesting than it may look on paper. Rams and 49ers. Our coverage from Westwood One beginning at 5:30. But I want to start with Sunday's game and the Broncos and the Eagles. And I've seen some discourse on the interwebs that I find to be objectively ridiculous, if we're being honest here. Drew Brees, I think, is doing a little bit of the heavy lifting for Sean Payton to try and make this less than what it is, this game on Sunday. Drew Brees was quoted this week saying that the Eagles are not the best team in the NFL because they are a CeeDee Lamb drop and a Rams chip shot field goal away from being 2-2. I've seen other places, a blog or some ranked the most difficult games the Broncos have left on their schedule, and this one on Sunday was ranked 5th. And I think both of those things are ridiculous. First of all, the Eagles are absolutely the best team in the NFL. And we have to stop saying that teams that find ways to win like it's a negative thing. Right? The fact of the matter is the Philadelphia Eagles are one of the 2 undefeated teams in the NFL left standing, and they have beaten Dallas, Kansas City, in Arrowhead, by the way, the Rams, in Tampa Bay. Who else would you like this Philadelphia Eagles team to go through? Buffalo? Okay. Other than that, they faced a high-powered Dallas offense. I know their defense is what it is. Kansas City, LA, Tampa. It's a pretty good group of teams. And you can nitpick, obviously, those teams and how the Eagles won the games. But the fact of the matter is they won them. And especially the Rams one is a little ridiculous to me because they block the kick. Eagles get no credit for blocking a kick. The Philadelphia, I can't see that quote and not think that Drew Brees is trying to do some bidding for his former head coach. The fact of the matter is the Eagles are the best team in the NFL. And this is the most difficult game on the Broncos schedule. The consequence of it, okay, maybe there's a game week 18 or week 17 that will ultimately decide whether the Denver Broncos get into the playoffs or not, but we're not there yet. You can't project and say this game's going to matter more. This is the most difficult game on their schedule. And this is a Philadelphia Eagles team that will test every pain point the Denver Broncos have had this last season plus. Right? The Bo Nix era, if you will. It's a game on a short week, which I don't care who the opponent is, makes it more difficult. They're going on the road And just some numbers for you. The Philadelphia Eagles are 13-1 at home the last 2 seasons, including the playoffs. The Broncos, including the playoffs, are 4-8 away from Empower Field. Philadelphia is a good team. They are the best team. And the Denver Broncos are not good against really good teams. 2-7 against teams that are either playoff teams, and then I'm taking the Chargers and the Colts this year, including them, because they sit atop their respective divisions. And Philadelphia, to my point about how ridiculous that quote from Drew Brees is, the Philadelphia Eagles are 13-2 the last season plus in one-score games. People did this to the Chiefs last year, right? It was luck. It was devil magic. It was the referees. It was all this kind of stuff. And it was all these ways, the Chiefs aren't that good. Remind me what game they ended up playing in, the Super Bowl. So I saw it all last year with the Kansas City Chiefs. Zero credit for winning all these close games. I understand that it's not common to see a team win as many one-score games as the Kansas City Chiefs did. Philadelphia is 13-2. That's a pretty ridiculous clip. I think they deserve some credit for that. The Denver Broncos, meanwhile, 2-8 in one-score games. Tell me how this isn't the most difficult game on the Broncos schedule. You know, Sean Payton has gotten the Denver Broncos over the hump on a lot of things in his tenure. Right? There was the 10 straight games of having a halftime lead that the Broncos ended up losing, that they snapped under Sean Payton. That's when he famously said, "It's not my hump," respectfully. Right? But there are other things. They beat Kansas City for the first time in 17 games. They beat Mahomes for the first time ever. They made the playoffs, obviously, for the first time in a long time. They snapped a 7-game losing streak on Monday Night Football. So Sean Payton has gotten the Denver Broncos over the hump on a lot of different things. A win on Sunday gets them over like every conceivable remaining hump that they have. They don't win one-score games. They don't beat good teams. They don't win on the road. And they're having to do this on a short week on the road. And that's why I said yesterday, the Cincinnati game, that's not changing anybody's mind about this team. Sorry. Doesn't count. The Denver Broncos are a team that we are supposedly supposed to graduate to a different level, right? They're a playoff team. They're a supposed Super Bowl team. Beating a Joe Burrow-less Cincinnati Bengals team where you let off the gas if you're the Broncos offense in the second half. Sorry, you don't get credit for that. It doesn't undo everything we have seen through the previous 3 weeks. Beating Philadelphia does. That's a signature win. And I think that's one thing that the duo of Sean Payton and Bo Nix are lacking. What's that signature win over the last season plus? Beating Kansas City's backups in Week 18? Beating the Jameis Winston-led Cleveland Browns? You look at teams that go deep in the playoffs, and they have that kind of a win under their belt at some point, where you can look at them after that game and say that was a signature win. That was a statement. That was the arrival of this team onto a different level in terms of our NFL discourse. Broncos haven't had one of those. They've beaten up on bad teams. I mean, that's like the first thing you are expected to do. If you're a good team, you beat up on bad teams. That's the first thing. All of this other stuff has eluded the Denver Broncos. Finding ways to win games rather than finding ways to lose them when they are close. Going into hostile environments. Beating other really good teams. Broncos haven't done it. Eagles have done it routinely. So we'll see if there are games in the future. And you got to imagine there will be games later on in the season that will have greater consequence to it. The Denver Broncos are not making or missing the playoffs based on the result on Sunday. But in terms of a test and the matchup itself, this is as difficult as it will get for the Denver Broncos this season. And if they win, you can look at every other game on their schedule and say, why not? Every other game on their schedule, including Christmas at Arrowhead. The Philadelphia Eagles are the best team in the NFL. They deserve credit for the way they've won. And a somewhat sobering thought for many teams left on the Eagles schedule. Everyone's talking about them like they are an 0-4 team with the whole A.J. Brown stuff and the way this team has looked. They're going to be better moving forward than they are right now. Broncos better hope that day isn't Sunday. Take your thoughts. 719-247-1313. I suppose two questions in one that I'd be curious. Is Philadelphia the best team in the NFL? And with that, does this make this game the most difficult on the Broncos schedule? I say yes to both. 719-247-1313. The national keyword for the 5K a day, your chance to win $1,000 5 times a day, 5 days a week. It is SAVE, SAVE. Nope, excuse me, coin. Scratch that. COIN. Text coin to 95819, and you will be entered to win $1,000. And again, be listening all day long for those national keywords for your chance to win $1,000 with the 5K a day here on Extra Sports 1300. Taking your text, my assertion at the beginning of the show, if you're just joining me now, is that this is the most difficult game on the Broncos' schedule. And it starts with the fact that the Eagles are the best team in the NFL right now. And it goes on to all that has made Philadelphia the best team in the league, not just now, but obviously last year being Super Bowl champions would qualify them as the best team in the league. It hits all of the Broncos' pain points. Eagles win a ton of close games. Broncos lose a ton of close games. Broncos don't beat good teams. Eagles beat good teams. Broncos haven't won a lot away from Empower Field. Eagles are dominant at home the last season plus. They're just all of these things. And not every team in the NFL has those things. I mean, Sean Payton talked about it today. Most good teams win consistently at home. So I think every good team has a level of success in all of those areas. But the Philadelphia Eagles have been downright dominant in close games at home. And the Broncos have been very much not the case. Tom Texan says, so beating the best team in the NFL on the road on a short week is your expectation of the Broncos. Nobody on this program for the last year has said the Broncos are Super Bowl contenders. I understand Sean Payton said that, but he had to. I think the Broncos fans just want improvement over last year, but to expect them to beat the Eagles on the road or say they need to win is ridiculous. I would agree with that. That's why I'm not saying that, Tom. Not saying that the Broncos have to beat the Philadelphia Eagles. And I'm definitely telling you they're not going to. I told you on Monday they weren't going to. Or Tuesday, because there's a Monday night game. I told you that this game is going to be reminiscent of the Baltimore game last year, where the Broncos were coming off of a comfortable win, but there were some warning signs there going into a buzzsaw, and the Broncos just were not able to handle Baltimore. I'm not saying they have to beat Philadelphia, and they're not going to. But what I am saying is that this would be a game that you could change your perspective about the Denver Broncos. If they were to beat Philadelphia on Sunday, I would sit up and take notice. Absolutely, I would. But luckily for the Denver Broncos, it's not the only game. They still have 2 matchups with Kansas City. They have another matchup with the Chargers. They got Washington later in the season. There are some teams that you don't know, are they good, are they bad? We'll see if Houston irons some things out in the next few weeks before the Broncos play them. Is Jacksonville for real? But the 2 games against Kansas City, LA, Washington, those are all not as great opportunities. I mean, this would be the ultimate. I mean, maybe the Broncos fans would say going into Kansas City on Christmas would be the ultimate. But this would be, let's say, Arrowhead on Christmas, which obviously has different connotations to it, given that that's a division rival and all that kind of stuff. In terms of the quality of team, in terms of the matchup, in terms of the situation the Broncos find themselves in going on the road on a short week, this is the most difficult game on their schedule. So I'm not saying that the Broncos have to beat Philly to prove it. There are going to be other games along the way. Unfortunately, they already had one, and now two, given I know the Colts lost, but they played really well against the Rams. They played two good teams this year. They lost to both of them. So they've already had two opportunities, swing and a miss on both. And they'll have more after Philadelphia. They don't have to, and they won't. They will not beat Philadelphia. But the other aspect of it, I don't know. Yeah, I don't think I've read a text from somebody saying that the Broncos are Super Bowl contenders, and that's why you are more rational than Sean Payton or than ESPN. But let's open that up as a conversation. Because I don't recall a lot. I remember seeing texts about how the Broncos are going to fall off this year. I remember those. I don't remember a lot of people at the beginning of the season weighing in and saying, this is what I think the Denver Broncos will be. And now you have the benefit of 4 games. What do you think that the Broncos are or can be? This from the 719 in terms of the Eagles. Even if the Eagles went 2-2 with the schedule they've had, that's really not that bad. Yeah, and look, you can nitpick. I get it. And I'm not saying that Dallas is a great win. Okay, but like, who would the other team be right now? Buffalo? Okay, they beat Baltimore, who is in complete disarray, according to people. Like 3 weeks later, the Baltimore Ravens win doesn't look like as good of a win as it was on that night. And I'm not trying to take away credit from the Buffalo Bills because they were brilliant in that game and they were trailing and they had a great comeback. And then look at what Buffalo's played since. So if those are the two teams, even with how close opponents were to beating the Philadelphia Eagles, if we're taking what Drew Brees said, okay, so what's better? A close win over a really good team or a blowout of a bad team? I'll put Philly's 4 wins up against anybody in the NFL. Is there any team in the NFL that has had, who has been successful? Because I know the Giants' schedule might be more difficult the first 4 games of the season. But is there another team in the NFL that has a similar degree of difficulty on the schedule that has been successful, that has come out of it with a winning record? I just think that's an objectively ridiculous thing to say. And then also, given the fact that Sean Payton, Drew Brees' former head coach, is all about those kind of wins. That's what he's trying to turn the Denver Broncos into, the type of team that will block a kick at the end of the game. A team that will be buttoned up and not commit the big mistake and allow their opponent to. I know there are other things that go into it. You know, if, let's say, the Eagles beat the Rams, you know, and they didn't have Puka Nacua or something like that, then okay, that's a different conversation. But the Philadelphia Eagles have beaten 3 teams that I think are definite playoff teams. And I give them credit for beating the Rams rather than saying it was a screw up on the Rams' part. So, to me, right now, through 4 weeks, Philadelphia is the best team in the NFL. And there's a point when you're what did I say? They were 16-2 in one-score games. It's not a fluke. And it's exactly the type of team that Sean Payton wants the Denver Broncos to be. Seven 719-24-7-1313. We'll take a break here, and then on the other side, want to get into some college football. Another big game this week for the Colorado Buffaloes, but a huge game, a massive contest for the Air Force Falcons. We'll get to that, but in the meantime, speaking of big games this weekend, Switchbacks hosting rival San Antonio. The Switchbacks needing wins to get into the postseason. You're going to want to be there for rivalry, costumes, and candy. Be at Widener Field at 5:30 for trunk or treating in the costume contest in the fan zone presented by Farmers Insurance. And then the match kicks off at 6. If you would like to go, I have a 4-pack of tickets for the 13th texter to text Switchbacks and their name to 719-24-7-1313. The latest national keyword for the 5K a day. Your chance to win $1,000 5 times a day, Monday through Friday, here on Extra Sports 1300. That word is coin, COIN. Text that to 95819 for your chance to win. Speaking of winning, congrats to Chris, who picked up a 4-pack of tickets to see the Switchbacks take on San Antonio on Saturday. That'll be a big match. Earlier in the day, much earlier in the day, Air Force has an opportunity to save their season. Last week against Hawaii was, I think, a must-win game, and they didn't get it. And I think at this point, any chance at playing for a Mount West title is probably out the door. But at a service academy, the Commander-in-Chief's trophy means more. Not to say that the Falcons aren't disappointed that they haven't done better to start conference play, but the uniqueness, and I suppose you could say this about many rivalries that happen across college football or college sports for that matter, is that no matter how rough things are in conference play, if you got that one rival that doesn't have to happen to be in your conference, and in Air Force's case it's 2, and you can beat them, then the other thing won't bother you as much. And Saturday, they will be in Annapolis trying to get halfway to reclaiming the CIC trophy by beating the current trophy holders in Navy. So that's the opportunity that lies in front of Air Force. I still think that they needed to win last week in order. I'm not, where I stand. I'm not a big believer in momentum from one week to another, but there was just so much going wrong on the defensive side of the football for this team that if they were to beat Hawaii, I think you could say that there would be improvement on the defensive side. I don't know how much you can say that after what Hawaii was able to do. So defense is still the primary area of concern when it comes to this Air Force team. And linebacker Blake Fletcher, who's one of the top tacklers in the country so far, he's had a very good year, says one specific aspect of their defense is what has to be better Saturday against Navy.
Coach North talked about it in our team meeting. We were horrible on third down. We have been. We definitely have to get that fixed. We spend a lot of time in practice. We have multiple periods a day where we work on third down. We call it money down period. And it's at the end of the day, that's where you make your money. It doesn't matter how good you are on first and second down if you can't stop them on third down and get off the field.
And to illustrate his point, Air Force this year is 131st in the country on third down when it comes to their defense. Offensively, they're like 17th, probably not where they'd want to be. But defensively, they have really struggled on third down, and Navy is the best third down team in America. So that obviously has to be better. Defensively, that has to be the key. They got to get off the field on third down, and then you go from there. Well, how do you go about doing it? And that is far easier said than done, given that Navy is as dynamic as they have been in years with Blake Horvath, their quarterback. And they are not. It's funny, this matchup, if you are a longtime fan of Service Academy football, it may be unrecognizable to you. Not to say that Air Force doesn't want to run the ball, not to say that Navy doesn't want to run the ball, but the dynamism that exists within these two offenses, their ability to throw the football, we don't see it a lot in a service academy rivalry. And we have it with these two quarterbacks in Blake Horvath and Liam Zarka, who has been a revelation. Remember, we were going into the season not knowing who Air Force's quarterback was. Then they played the Bucknell game, had a bye week, still didn't know who their quarterback was. Well, that has been all put to bed now. Any idea that it's not Liam Zarka is completely out the window. As the last two games, he has been the first Air Force quarterback since 2002 to both run and throw for 100 yards in back-to-back games. That hasn't happened in more than 2 decades. But Zarka's the quarterback on the other side of Liam Zarka has been doing it for a couple of years now. Here's Troy Calhoun on the Navy quarterback.
He moves exceptionally well, has a tremendous feel for what they're asking him to do and how he operates within their offense. Very effective at hitting throws down the field too, and has good playmakers around him too. You know, really, really good playmakers. I don't know if he's playing or not, but the fullback, I mean, he is talented. He can run. He's powerful the whole bit. Certainly who they've had out there at receiver the last 2 years. And, you know, you can just tell, I mean, the instincts, the anticipation. When to carry a ball, when to pitch a ball, certainly knowing and letting a route develop, even though I might get thumped, but I'll still being able to get it out of my hand. Those are the attributes that certainly you see as a football player.
And I think a lot of those are the boxes you want a service academy quarterback to have. Because even though when you think of service academy football, you think of running, you think of the option, all this kind of stuff. And yes, all that exists. But some of the most successful Air Force teams certainly have been ones that can hit a big play over the top, that can hit you in the passing game. It's not what they want to do more than anything else, but it's part of it. And Navy the same way, Army the same way. And these two quarterbacks, I think you're seeing it with Liam Zarka. You're definitely seeing it with Liam Zarka. Maybe even with him and Horvath, it's everything you want in a service academy quarterback plus. They're a little bit more consistent throwing the football. You can call more passing plays with both of these guys than maybe you would normally, even with a decent passing quarterback in those offenses. This might be the best quarterback matchup we have had with Air Force and Army in terms of pure talent, maybe ever. And I went back and looked, and obviously, if I'm going to say something like that, I want to have a little bit of evidence to back up my claim. So Tim Jefferson, widely acknowledged as one of the most dynamic Air Force quarterbacks ever. He graduated, then in came Keenan Reynolds, who is arguably the greatest quarterback in Navy history. Certainly the numbers say he is. There's one that used to play for the Dallas Cowboys long, long ago that may be held in higher regard overall, but numbers-wise, Keenan Reynolds is atop many career lists and season lists for Navy. So Tim Jefferson graduated, in comes Keenan Reynolds, so we didn't get that. I went back, Jim Kubiak, also one of the most decorated Navy quarterbacks of all time. He was kind of sandwiched between, he was a couple years after D. Dallas, but right before Sean Carney. So I just kind of look, and it seems like when Navy has had one of the best quarterbacks, maybe Air Force hasn't, and then when Air Force does, Navy doesn't. I think with the way that Liam Zarka, and I know it's early with Zarka, but the way he has looked and the numbers he is putting up, this might be the most talented matchup we've had in this rivalry. And as I say that, and all of these additional things that Horvath can do and that Liam Zarka can do, and that's all things that a service academy would like to have. But Horvath played last year. He didn't really throw the ball that effectively against Air Force. Now, the secondary of Air Force has gotten picked apart. So maybe that Horvath can throw the football more effectively than he did a year ago. But when it's service academy versus service academy, I think it's almost like a source of pride before actually winning the game. Not more important than winning the game, but I think when no matter how dynamic, no matter how much passing that Army or Navy or Air Force may do in other games in their conference season, when they get out there against each other, they want to out-service academy the other one. So I think the game plan for both, even if Liam Zarka can spin it, even if Ethan Horvath can spin it, I think they want to run it. I think they want to play a 17-13, 13-10 game. It's just you get into those matchups with other service academies, and I think you want to out-service academy the other one. And then when you're in your other games, like your conference schedule, the way college football is nowadays, you got to have some of that other stuff. So we'll see how the game plays out and whether I'm right on that. But I think both teams will come out and just as soon run the ball 40 times and control the clock for a quarter and a half at a time. And I was listening to Ethan Horvath, his press conference earlier this week, and he was talking about, somebody asked him, what he learned about playing against Air Force last year. And one of the things he said that I think applies to Liam Zarka in this matchup, Ethan Horvath said, I didn't understand. And certainly that applies to the Army game, even more so, right? With all the history and how big the Army-Navy game is, whether the CIC trophy is on the line or not. But that was his first real taste of the rivalry and the competition for the Commander-in-Chief's trophy. He said, I didn't even understand. I thought I did. I didn't fully understand what this is and what it means and how bitter this rivalry is until I stepped out on the field. And I think there's going to be that with Liam Zarka. He can be told, all week by his coaches, by his teammates, by other cadets, what this means, and he could get a bunch of people saying, hey, we're pulling for you. This is the biggest thing. I don't think Liam Zarka is going to fully comprehend it until Saturday morning. And that will be interesting to see how he responds to that. Because this is unequivocally, there's not many other games to compare it to for Liam Zarka, who's really just starting his Air Force career. But this by far is the biggest game that he's played in. And that's kind of one of those X factors that you can't calculate until you see it on the first drive or two. How's Liam Zarka going to hold up as a very young quarterback in a very, very big football game? But everything that happened before and anything that will happen between Sunday and the Army game doesn't matter as much doesn't feel as bad if Air Force can go to Annapolis and win that football game. And I'm not huge on, rivalry series or past history, right? Because teams are different, maybe less so at a service academy than at other schools, but it's kind of that momentum from one week to the next. The idea that a game 2 or 3 years ago has any bearing on this, but for what it's worth, home field advantage lately hasn't meant a whole lot. So the idea you could just check Navy. Well, obviously Navy's going to win because Navy's at home, and Air Force may be able to beat Army because they'll be at home later in the season. When it comes to Navy Air Force, I can tell you, Navy came into Falcon Stadium last year and blew out Air Force. Last 2 games in Annapolis, Air Force has beaten Navy. So home field advantage, as cliche as it sounds, it goes out the window when these two teams meet up, especially lately in this series. That game will kick off at 10 a.m. Mountain Time. You can listen to it on our sister station, 740 KVOR, with Jesse Kurtz and Jim Arthur, who are there in Annapolis or en route to Annapolis. 719-247-1313. Take your predictions for Saturday's game between Air Force and Navy. In the meantime, multi-platinum progressive rock group Trans-Siberian Orchestra, you know them well. They return to Colorado Springs with their winter tour, Ghosts of Christmas Eve, for not one but 2 spectacular shows on Sunday, November 16th. They have a matinee at 2:30 and the nightcap, if you will, at 7:30, both at the Broadmoor World Arena. Tickets are on sale now. They go quickly. Even in a last-minute town like Colorado Springs is, don't wait till a day or two before. You may be out of luck. Get your tickets now, axs.com, or in person at the Pikes Peak Center box office. Go in. Welcome in hour 2 on this Thursday. Week 5 in the National Football League begins with the 49ers and Rams. Our coverage from Westwood One begins at 5:30. In the meantime, appreciate you tuning in and appreciate you watching the show on a daily basis. YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. The handle, all the same on all of those platforms at XTRA Sports 1300. And while you're there, like, subscribe, drop a comment, do all the things that you do on social media. Or if you'd like to go the traditional route, lines are open, 719-247-1313. Updating you on the baseball, if you are interested. Tigers will move on to play the Seattle Mariners as they took care of business against the Guardians in Cleveland. And bottom of the third, the Cubs are up 2-0 on San Diego. The other decisive game 3 tonight will be Yankees and Red Sox. I said yesterday that for the Denver Broncos to beat the Philadelphia Eagles and pull off what would be by far the most significant and impressive win of the Sean Payton Bo Nix era, that they would have to make sure that they kept the Eagles' run game where it is. Right now, they're missing Mekhi Becton. Saquon Barkley's averaging only about 3 yards a carry. Jalen Hurts, the volume is there, but the quality isn't quite there for him. A lot of people are looking at the Eagles and thinking that they're not the best team in the NFL, which they absolutely are because of this. But the Eagles' run game can't get right against the Denver Broncos. As long as the Broncos' odds are, it will be next to impossible to beat them if all of a sudden Saquon and Jalen Hurts start running the ball. And I could apply the same aspect of that game if I flipped it to the offense in terms of what the Broncos have to do if they want a shot to beat the Philadelphia Eagles. And the big question that we're ultimately asking about the Broncos this year, are they different? Are they better than they were a year ago? Kind of like, what was that, Ronald Reagan who asked, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? Was that the politician that did that? Somebody can fact check me on that. But are the Broncos better than they were a year ago? All in all, no. Right? All told, this does not look like a better team than they were a year ago. But that doesn't mean that there aren't aspect of this team that is better and clearly better. And it's the run game. J.K. Dobbins is the 4th leading rusher in the National Football League. And with, Dre Greenlaw not working out so far, Evan Ingram the same way, Hufanga's been pretty good. J.K. Dobbins was not the most significant. I think he's second behind Evan Ingram, at least if you take Sean Payton at his word in terms of what a joker means to his offense. But J.K. Dobbins was a significant get. And even if you like R.J. Harvey, you had to know that this was going to be J.K. Dobbins' show. And Sean Payton has talked about he can feed 2. He certainly did against Cincinnati. But it's until R.J. Harvey really emerges against a team that's not the Cincinnati Bengals, it's J.K. Dobbins. He's the lead back of the Denver Broncos. And he has given the Broncos a big boost in their run game. And I think he's going to have to be good in order for the Broncos to have a chance to beat the Philadelphia Eagles. And like defending the run, the opportunity is there for Denver to be able to run the ball effectively. The Eagles have not been a good rush defense this year. They're below the middle of the pack in the NFL in terms of rushing yards allowed. So you look at their run game not clicking on all cylinders so far, and then on the other side of the football, the Eagles having a little bit of trouble slowing down the run. To me, that's where this is. You want the key to the Broncos having a chance. It's in the trenches. It's the run game. The Broncos win that battle, they got a chance. But J.K. Dobbins overall has been, I think, easily, I don't want to call him necessarily a surprise, although he's being the fourth leading rusher in the NFL is pretty good. I don't know that I was expecting J.K. Dobbins to be the fourth best rusher in the NFL so far. But that has been the thing that you can say through 4 weeks the Broncos have added. Is there anything else about this team that has been that you can clearly tell is better? No. But that's going to be their key on Sunday. Keeping the Eagles' run game down and establishing their own with J.K. Dobbins. And you know how important that is to the Denver Broncos, and not just this game, but any game. How much Bo Nix and the offense struggles when they're behind the chains. And their ticket to being on time, on schedule, is running the ball effectively on first down. And this Broncos offensive line has gotten all kinds of flowers. They have been arguably, I know it's difficult to measure the quality of an offensive line, but those outlets that do, whether it be Pro Football Focus or some of these other analytics companies and websites, they say that the Broncos offensive line has been the best in the NFL. And I know that the Eagles defense has lost some players. They're still really good. They're still really stout up front. But if the Broncos can establish the run and keep the Eagles' run game down, then they'll have a chance to pull off what would be a massive upset and easily the most significant win of Sean Payton and Bo Nix's tenure together. Also saw this on a Broncos front. Bill Barnwell of ESPN put out at the quarter poll all of his quarter poll leaders in each of the individual accolade categories. Rookies of the year, defensive player of the year, offensive player of the year, coach of the year. He has Nick Bonito at the top in terms of defensive player of the year. And it's hard to argue. The guy's has one of the highest sack totals in the NFL. Despite, and this was an interesting stat thrown out by Barnwell. So Nick Bonito is among the league leaders in sacks. Two guys that are right there with him or ahead of him, Brian Burns of the Giants and Myles Garrett. Nick Bonito has put up his level of production on 86 snaps. Myles Garrett has played 98. Brian Burns has played 127. And I think Burns is one sack, a half a sack ahead of Nick Bonito. You know, last year, the more efficient pass rusher of those two, Bonito, well, and I'll throw in Zach Allen into the mix as well, of Allen, Bonito, and Cooper was Jonathan Cooper. Right? This was a guy that was able to get to the quarterback despite somewhat limited reps, or at least more limited than Bonito or Zach Allen. Now that's kind of evened out, and Nick Bonito, coming off of this big payday, has been just as productive as he was last year while not being on the field as much. And after signing that big deal, it comes expectations, right? And you thought against that a little bit was Sean Payton's assertion that he had to watch the pitch count he said this about Zach Allen, but also Benito. He didn't want those guys on the field as much. Like, okay, well, how productive is Benito and Allen going to be? And we've seen Zach Allen's production has gone down. He hasn't been bad by any stretch of the imagination. But he was definitely high volume. His production came through the fact that he was on the field so much. But Nick Benito, they've lowered that pitch count, and he's still getting to the quarterback and still sacking the quarterback at an elite level. So I have a hard time arguing with Bill Barnes. Not that I go in wanting to, because Nick Benito has been fantastic. I think you would say that. And we have to acknowledge that last year was unique in Pat Surtain winning, a corner winning. It doesn't happen a ton. But one thing that you knew after Pat Surtain won is that definitely a corner would not win this year. That is not a well that the voters are going to keep going back to, and you have to do something quite amazing, which Surtain did last year. He completely changed the Broncos season with that pick six against the Raiders. He held down every receiver that he went up against. He absolutely deserved to be the defensive player of the year. But now we're going to go back to our regularly scheduled programming when it comes to that award, which is looking at the sack totals. And given the fewer snaps that he has played compared to a Myles Garrett or a Brian Burns, I think Nick Benito, albeit 4 weeks into the season, probably deserves to be the leader at the quarter pole of the season for Defensive Player of the Year. But when I saw that and was thinking about it, I was like, man, for the Broncos defense to win back-to-back Defensive Player of the Year, that could not have happened many times. As much as voters try to look for, hey, how much help does this guy have, right? It ultimately, I think, decided the MVP vote. Right? Lamar Jackson had Derrick Henry. Josh Allen didn't. Even though James Cook was a very effective running back, I think a lot of people said Lamar Jackson has more. So I think a lot of voters try to look for, well, this guy had this help and this guy had this help. Same thing applies to Defensive Player of the Year. So I went back and looked. In the last 30 years, it's actually happened more than I would have expected it to. Bryce Paup and Bruce Smith for the Bills, 29 and 30 years ago, 1995-96. They were teammates who won Defensive Player of the Year in back-to-back years. You go to the Bucks, Warren Sapp won in 99. Derek Brooks won in 02. So they were teammates, but they weren't consecutive Defensive Player of the Year. The next one, Ray Lewis and Ed Reed were back-to-back years. Second Defensive Player of the Year for Ray Lewis in 03. And then Ed Reed won the following year. And then two teammates that were separated by a couple of years. James Harrison won in 08 and Troy Polamalu in 2010. So it's not unheard of for teammates to win Defensive Player of the Year in short order, but it's happened twice in the last 30 years that teammates have won Defensive Player of the Year in back-to-back years. I know it's not, at this point, 4 weeks in, is not the primary concern of you as a Broncos fan, but it is something to watch as this season goes on, whether the Broncos can bring home back-to-back Defensive Player of the Year awards. But that snap count thing, and I look at the snap counts every week, but I haven't compared them to last year. I know Jonah Ellis has been on the field more than I seem to remember, or maybe I'm noticing him more. Jonah Ellis has been really good this season as well. But Nick Bonito being on the field for 86 snaps, 12 fewer than Myles Garrett, and 41 fewer than Brian Burns. And yet he's right there with those two guys in terms of sack totals. That's impressive work from Nick Bonito. And what you hope as a Broncos fan is that he gets a few more cracks at it this weekend to add to his sack total. Got to force the Eagles to throw the football. But again, by stopping the run. That's the way to do it. Eagles aren't going to voluntarily throw the football. You got to make them. And then you can unleash Nick Bonito, Jonathan Cooper, and company. 719-24-7. 1313. Take your thoughts on Sunday's Eagles-Broncos game. Week 5 begins tonight with San Francisco and LA. If you're looking for a place to watch the game, how about Cleats Bar and Grill? They are your football headquarters. Their Thursday special, 10 wings and a 60-ounce pitcher of domestic draft for only $20. Or if you want to go with the wings and a 60-ounce pitcher of craft draft, it's just $5 more. They got 19 screens. You'll be able to see the game just fine. Great atmosphere there. That's Cleats 6624 Delmonico Drive. The latest national keyword for the 5K a day is bill, B-I-L-L, like you could pay a lot of your bills with $1,000 with the 5K a day, but it's just singular, bill, B-I-L-L. Text that to 95819. You'll get a bounce back letting you know that you indeed entered to win $1,000. It's something we're doing 5 times a day, Monday through Friday. That's a lot of money we're giving you with the 5K a day. Now, I truly mean this. I do want the show to be participatory. I do want to hear from you. And if you want to bring up something, I know we're all locked into football, and we'll get back to football. I want to talk some Buffs coming up here shortly. But, hey, you text in and you're got a question, got a comment, I'll go to it like this from the 719. Hey, Ryan, any news on the Nuggets in the start to the season? Are you hearing good things? I'm hearing what I need to hear. I'll say that. I'm hearing what I need to hear. The depth on this team, all the talk with the Nuggets at camp there out in San Diego. It's all good things. This team is deeper. I thought Jamal Murray had a really good comparison because everyone wants to look at the title team. Right? The Avs, Jared Bednar came out and said this is the deepest the Avalanche have been since they won the Stanley Cup. So people wanted that from the Nuggets to say, well, does this team remind you of the championship team? I thought Jamal Murray made a really good point. He said, no, it's a 2020 team. And if you remember, that team was the hallmark of that team was depth. That's when we were introduced to Bubble Jamal, right? But they had Paul Millsap, they had Jeremy Grant, they actually had a backup big for Nikola Jokic. It was Mason Plumlee. We won't discuss what he did in game 1 against the Lakers, but they had depth. So maybe for some people, they want to hear that Jamal Murray say, no, this team reminds me of the team that won the title. But I think it's a good observation because that's when the Nuggets' depth started to get sapped. Right? Jeremy Grant cashed in because he wanted to be more of an offensive option, so he went to Detroit. Mason Plumlee left. Paul Millsap was gone. Obviously, they make the trade for Aaron Gordon and had to give up some of their depth to acquire Aaron Gordon. So I thought it was a good comparison made by Jamal Murray. But the depth guys they're as advertised. But I've heard what I've needed to hear from the Denver Nuggets. I mean, every team talks and has high hopes and all of this kind of stuff, but there were a couple of things, a couple of lingering questions from the offseason that I needed to have addressed by the players themselves before I think you could totally buy into this Nuggets team. And one of them was with one of those depth players in Jonas Valanciunas. Right? We heard reports that Valanciunas was cool with being with Denver, that whole saga where the team from Greece was trying to poach him and everything like that. Did he really want to be here, or did the Nuggets kind of flex their muscle and the right they had to retain his rights? Here is Jonas Valanciunas at Media Day earlier this week.
One thing I want to clarify is I'm here. I'm happy to be here. And I'm going to dive in to do everything to win more games than ever.
And I said all summer when that was going on that I needed to hear from him that he was excited to be in Denver because the buy-in is important. Doesn't do a lot of good for the Nuggets to have depth if the guys that are providing that depth are not buying in to this team and what they're trying to accomplish. So that was a good thing to hear, but you know where I've been with the Denver Nuggets and their chances this year. It's not the depth. It's great that they have depth. It was necessary that they got depth, but ultimately, even in today's NBA, when we talk about, whoa, look how deep the Pacers are, look how deep OKC is, and Nikola Jokic talked about the fact that they weren't deep enough. That's part of it. But ultimately, what did, and this is an oversimplification, I grant you, but what did the NBA Finals last year ultimately get decided by? The Pacers' best player getting hurt and Shea being terrific in that series, right? The two best players for their respective teams played the biggest roles of anyone. So even with the depth that the Denver Nuggets have, it's still going to be their best players that will ultimately decide. I look at it this way. The depth that the Nuggets have can be their ticket to a Western Conference final or an NBA Finals, but to win a title, you still need, as cliche as it sounds, your best players to be your best players. And any worry that I have that won't be the case for the Denver Nuggets, it's not with number 15, it's with number 27. So it's great to hear that Jonas Valanciunas is bought in. Is Jamal Murray bought in? And the way he buys in is by being committed to his body, right? Being in shape, not playing himself into shape, preventing injuries, all those kind of things. Jamal Murray, who looks pretty good, but is also saying that this offseason was different for him in a good way in terms of those questions that have been asked a lot about Jamal Murray.
After, Team Can and all that, just not having, my body not having time to get back into shape or running shape and stuff like that, that really affected me. So just being able to have time off, be able to build back up, stuff like that, tone down going into the training camp, all that's huge, so I just feel a lot better than last summer.
And you need to hear that too, right? There are mile markers along the road here where, okay, this summer was better. He was able to get in the gym, able to work out. Is he going to remain committed to that once the season begins? Because everybody's healthy when game one tips off. But are we going to have these little spots along the way where Jamal Murray's missing 2 or 3 games because of this, and then he's back, and then he misses another week? So it's got to stay. It's great that he's off to this start, right? That he has a good offseason of conditioning and he's resting up and he's getting healthy, and that's great to hear. But it's got to continue through the season. Because if Jamal Murray is unavailable, then it puts more strain on the depth that is just supposed to be there to support. It's not supposed to be there to take over and help the Denver Nuggets win a ton of basketball games. So you want Jamal Murray on the floor, and I've said this, he needs to be an all-star this year. There's no reason why he can't. We've seen the best of Jamal Murray. That is easily all-star caliber. And all the comparisons to Jimmy Butler's been an all-star. Right? I know he's another one of those guys that seems like a completely different person when the playoffs roll around. And Jamal Murray can still do that. He can still elevate his game to the highest level when the playoffs begin. In fact, I prefer it. I want the best of Jamal Murray in the playoffs. But with how difficult the West is, you have the defending champs who, because of how young they are, I don't know that they are as susceptible to some of the things that defending champions are, getting fat and happy, being satisfied. I think Oklahoma City is still young enough that they want to keep going. They think that they can win a bunch of titles and they're motivated to do that. Also, they're a little bit healthier than maybe more veteran teams. So OKC's every bit the OKC team that won the title last year. You know what Houston did, adding Kevin Durant. It's going to take some time for that all to come together, but that's a hand in glove fit. Kevin Durant's gets into that Houston team, fits in seamlessly. And Alperen Şengün is going to be the next young player to take a big jump. Alperen Şengün is going to be a problem this year. So Houston's really good. Minnesota is Minnesota. We still don't have evidence that the Denver Nuggets can beat the Timberwolves in a 7-game series. And then you have who's the team that's going to be this year's Rockets. A team that you like, but they're young, they're inexperienced, and you're like, okay, can I really bet on them to make a jump? And then they do. I think that team's San Antonio. Full season of De'Aaron Fox. You got the reigning rookie of the year in Steph Castle. Victor Wembanyama back, healthy. I think San Antonio is going to be a really good team. And then you start adding up all these teams, and now the Nuggets are, if Jamal Murray's not playing at an all-star level, of this depth doesn't come through for Denver, now you're looking at 4 seed, 5 seed, and the path to an NBA championship. Even though you trust the Nuggets because of their championship pedigree, it's difficult. It's difficult to navigate if you're not a top. In fact, in terms of making the NBA Finals or winning the NBA Finals, Nuggets were the top seed. They had home court the whole way through. So I know there's going to be a sentiment that the season really begins in the playoffs, and I think that that's true to an extent. But you can't completely dismiss the regular season. The Denver Nuggets need to be one of the top 2 or 3 teams in the West. Because recent history would tell you that if you're not one of the top 1 or 2 teams, you're probably not getting the NBA Finals. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, Saturday will be kind of an interesting experiment to see how far the Buffs have come, because they are taking on the team and playing them in the place where all of this with Coach Prime started. That's next here on Extra Sports 1300. The national keyword for the 5K a day, your chance to win $1,000 is Bill, Bill. Text that to 95819. You'll get a bounce back letting you know that you entered. And then make sure you're locked in tomorrow all day long for more of them national keywords and your chance to win $1,000 with the 5K a day here on Extra Sports 1300. Now, things aren't great so far for the Colorado Buffaloes, and Deion Sanders is one of those who is not pleasantly surprised with the way that things have gone.
No one could have told me we'll be sitting where I'm sitting right now with the record that we possess because of the talent that we have inside that locker room. But I've learned that talent just don't win games alone. It takes heart, it takes determination, it takes that dog, it takes the knowledge, it takes the preparation, that want to and that desire. And I will take that any day over talent.
And I'll add something to the list. I think coaching is also very important, to be able to coach up that talent, especially in the era of the transfer portal being the way it is. I think this era of college football and college basketball as well, really all college sports, if they dabble at all in the portal and NIL, and most of them do, I think it really separates the decent coaches from the great coaches. Because so many, unless you're Dabo Swinney, most programs in college football are taking on a bunch of transfers every single year. And the ones who are able to get the new group of players together, coach them up, get them on the same page and ready to win games right out of the gate, those are the really great coaches. And I don't think you've seen that from Colorado, and you've seen it in some of these games that they're not making the in-game adjustments. They're not able to sustain good play against BYU. Again, Kalani Sitake talked about after the game, the championship rounds, right? Dragging them into the championship rounds and being able to knock them out. CU hasn't been able to get into those championship rounds. Houston's another game. Game started off well enough for CU. They were in it. Then the third quarter rolled around and they didn't have the ball the entirety of the third quarter. So I agree with what Deion Sanders is saying, but I also think, too, that it's imperative that the coaches be able to get the team performing at a high level. And it's more difficult, I'll grant you. Like, NFL coaches don't deal with as many new players on a year-to-year basis as college football coaches. I'm not saying here pretending it's easy. But the coaches that can do it are the ones that you put at the top of the list for the best coaches in college football. And one that immediately comes to my mind right now is Dan Lanning. Oregon plays the NIL game. They hit the transfer portal. They got a new quarterback in Dante Moore taking over for Dylan Gabriel. And they haven't missed a beat. Just beat Penn State over the weekend. So there are some coaches that are able to take all these new players, coach them up, and get them pulling in the same direction right out of the gate. Deion Sanders hasn't been able to do it. So as much as he's evaluating his team, and he should, I think he should also do some self-evaluation on how he can be better moving forward. Here's Deion Sanders on exactly that.
More demanding. And that's what I've been the last 2 weeks, more demanding of what I want to see. I'm going to see what I want to see. We're going to do it over and over and over until I see it.
Okay, again, that's very player-centric. Important, but the bigger issues that I see with Colorado and the ones that remain here in year 3, clock management, inability to make adjustments. So, yeah, do all that stuff with the players, but I think that this coaching staff and Deion Sanders have to improve as well if the Buffs are going to salvage this season. And I think Saturday presents an interesting opportunity to really evaluate, because when you follow a team on a day-to-day basis, a week-to-week basis, sometimes you can't see the forest for the trees, right? You're just so caught up in what's happening right now. Maybe you're not looking at the bigger picture as much as you need to. Well, going back to the place where all of this Coach Prime stuff started is kind of a good way to evaluate where this team is, how far they've come. And TCU is now evaluating this new iteration of the Colorado Buffaloes without Shedeur Sanders, without Travis Hunter, and so many of the players that 2 years ago beat them as they were coming off of a national championship game appearance. Here's what Sonny Dykes sees in the Colorado Buffaloes a couple years later.
They're much deeper now than they were. You know, I think that's the biggest difference is, you know, you look at their defensive front and they're rolling guys through and they've got depth. You know, offensive line, I think, is a much better group than they've had. They just kind of keep getting better up front. And so, you know, really, really good team. And, you know, you can see that they're building it with depth.
And that's what we thought CU would be coming into the season, right? Sacrificing not by choice, but just by circumstance. You can't keep Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders forever. Can't keep Jimmy Horn and all of these guys forever. It's college football. But maybe the top line talent would be lesser than it has been in the first 2 years of Deion Sanders in Boulder, but the depth would be better. They've had multiple transfer portals, multiple recruiting classes. Obviously, Jordan Seaton was not on the Colorado Buffaloes the last time they played TCU. And I think you can see it, but it goes back to a common theme that Deion Sanders has been bringing up week in and week out. The consistency isn't there. You see the flashes, right? Beginning of the BYU game was great. You're watching that game and going, okay, here we go. Buffs have a chance to save their season here. And then they couldn't sustain it. So Sonny Dykes sees the improvements that the Colorado Buffaloes have made from a roster standpoint for the depth, but are they better? That's what we have yet to see. We have yet to see this Colorado Buffaloes team be better. They're like the Broncos in that way. Right? We have not yet seen a team that is better than the one we saw last year. Meanwhile, there are other teams in the Big 12 that are showing their improvement. Texas Tech, look at where they are. They were the story of the offseason with this billionaire writing them a blank check and all the guys they brought in through the transfer portal. And Texas Tech, Joey McGuire has been able to get them to come together and play at a high level. And they're a Big 12 contender. Buffs have not been. So we'll see Saturday how far the Colorado Buffaloes have really come and whether the depth that they have that you can see makes up for at least that's where we got to be. The bigger question was whether that would make for a better Colorado team than last year. But given the way the season is gone, I think the first step is just show that you didn't take as big of a step back as it appears you have. Right? That the depth will make up in large part for the top line talent that you've lost. Haven't seen that yet. And we'll see it against TCU. Deion Sanders has been saying that he thinks that this team is going to pop here soon. But I believe that was 2 weeks ago. 719-24-7. 13-13. Buffs and Frogs. Coming up this weekend, of course, Air Force and Navy, the main event of the weekend. Albert texting in on his beloved Buffs. CU has talent that doesn't believe in themselves. Salter falters, hesitates. See what you did there. Doesn't make the throws. The run game starts to roll, and a missed open receiver leads to a 30-yard sack. And they got with Miller and Welch, they got a little thunder lightning thing going on with the backfield. We'll see if they can get that going. I mean, it just, as it goes along, at some point you just say, okay, Caden Salter, maybe not what the Colorado Buffaloes were hoping he would be. But I like the personnel they have at the running back room. I know they're losing a different running back every week. But if that's true, if that's a group that doesn't believe in itself yet, that belief has to be instilled with them. It brings me back to my original point. Like, we could talk about the players, and yes, they have some fault in this, but the coaching staff, it's part of their job. And it's a difficult thing to do, right? And Sean Payton just talked about this today with Nick Bonito. You know, bringing up the idea that confidence really only grows or grows more when you have some track record of success. So it's an easier thing to do to instill confidence in your team when you have results. When you don't have results, that's trickier. And again, none of this is, unique to Colorado. And none of this is easy to do. It's part of building a culture, right? A culture where you come in and you say, I'm well equipped to win football games. Colorado and Deion Sanders and his staff still have some improvement to make in that area. Coming up next, we will hit the three stories that are driving the show. Don't forget, 5:30, our coverage begins Thursday Night Football between the Niners and Rams. I want to talk about that game before we're done as well. Hello there. Welcome in third hour, but it will only be a half a one as we have coverage of Thursday Night Football coming up at 5:30. Rams and Niners. Want to talk about that game. Maybe more interesting tonight than you think it will be. But appreciate you tuning in. And if you're listening on your radio, online at extrasports1300.com or on the Extra Sports 1300 app, sponsored by Diversus Health, mental health and well-being for all. You can not only listen to this show, you can also listen to the Rams and the 49ers on any one of those three platforms. 719-247-1313 is the text and phone line if you want to jump in here with your thoughts before we part ways for Thursday Night Football. Perhaps you have a thought on one of these, the three stories that are driving this show. All right, story number one is that the Broncos on Sunday are facing their toughest test of the season. Drew Brees this week said he would not characterize the Philadelphia Eagles as the best team in the National Football League because they are a CeeDee Lamb drop and a chip shot LA Rams field goal away from being 2-2. And I would push back and say, when it comes to that Rams kick, it wasn't that they missed it, it was blocked. The Philadelphia Eagles are absolutely through 4 weeks the best team in the NFL. And they were crowned the best team in the NFL by winning the Super Bowl last year. So that alone, in terms of strength of opponent, could make it arguably the toughest test of the year for the Denver Broncos. But it also, on a short week, hits all of the Broncos' pain points over the last season plus, since Bo Nix and Sean Payton got together. The Philadelphia Eagles at home over the past season plus are 13-1 regular season and playoffs. The Eagles are 13-1 at home. The Denver Broncos away from Empower Field are 4-8. The Philadelphia Eagles win one-score games. The very thing that Drew Brees was trying to downgrade them for, I say, makes them the best team in the league because they are 13-2 in one-score games. Last year in this one, the Denver Broncos in that same scenario, 2-8. Throw on top of it the fact that the Denver Broncos are 2-7 against playoff caliber teams the last 2 years. Yes, this is the most difficult game that the Broncos will have all season. And with that, creates the biggest opportunity. Right? You really want to change the trajectory of this season. You want to change hearts and minds. This is the game to do it. The Broncos do what the Chiefs and the Rams and the Buccaneers could not do and beat Philadelphia, and you do it on a short week on the road. That would be a perspective-altering win that they could get on Sunday. Now, there will be other games, both matchups with Kansas City, the second meeting with the Chargers, that Monday night game with the Commanders. There are other times this season where the Broncos can show that they are better than they were a year ago, that they're an improved team, that they can beat the best teams in this league. Unfortunately for them, a lot of those matchups are later. After Philadelphia, you have the 2 New York teams. You have the 2 Texas teams. Don't know that beating any of them is going to provide what beating the Eagles can provide. So this is kind of their chance for a while to be able to show what Sean Payton sees in this team. And it's going to be incredibly difficult. This is as bad of a matchup as I just laid out as the Broncos have on this schedule. There's not a worse matchup for the Denver Broncos the entirety of this season than Philadelphia. And it's on a short week, and it's on the road. Story number 2, we'll stick with football, but go to the college level. Here's Air Force head coach Troy Calhoun.
It's probably the team that you're at least, you tend to be fairly familiar with the other team's roster. You know, whether it's through evaluation, usually that's what it is, you know, when they were juniors or seniors in high school, you know, an evaluation that you did. You know, the other part is, they tend to be, a bunch of them have been really, really good games. We'll see.
That is the ball coach for the Air Force Academy talking about Saturday's matchup with Navy, which begins the battle for the CIC trophy. And the opportunity to stick with that theme for Air Force is to basically make everything that has happened, this rough start to the Mount West season, the fact that their chances at competing for a Mount West title are probably gone, puts all of that to the side. It won't matter nearly as much if Air Force can go into Annapolis and beat Navy. And I think what he's saying about the recent matchups, this is like a conference game, a divisional game that doesn't occur in your division or your conference. The familiarity between these 2 teams should lend itself to a good game. And I think that you look at the teams that have played Air Force recently, Utah State, Boise State, Hawaii, they're all pass first teams. Or in Boise's case, they're balanced. But Utah State, Hawaii are definitely throw, and then throw some more. Right now, the Falcons are having a miserable time against the pass. And even though Navy has a quarterback in Ethan Horvath that can throw the ball, I think when you get into these Service Academy games, Navy, Army, Air Force, they all want to out-Service Academy each other. Yeah, it's good for them, and I would say the same thing with Air Force with Liam Zarka and the way that he has played. It's nice to have that in your back pocket, that you feel confident you can air it out when necessary. But I think both of these teams are going to go into this game trying to make it look like the good old days of Service Academy football. You watch Navy, you watch Air Force through the first few weeks, it doesn't look like Service Academy football all the time because there's more dynamism involved. There's more throwing of the football. In these kind of games, I think they want to get back to their roots. They want to not only win, but they want to show that they are superior when it comes to Service Academy football, which is running the ball first and foremost. So the issues with the Air Force defense still are there, still should worry you. But when you look at Navy on paper and stylistically, compared to some of the teams Air Force has had a lot of trouble with the last 3 weeks, it's a little bit better of a matchup. Navy's undefeated, though. Not trying to say that it's a better matchup because Navy's not as good as the opponents they've had recently, because they might be better than all three of them. But as they say, styles make fights, and it's a style from a team that Air Force knows very well and I think is more capable of having success against, even with their issues defensively. But the first leg of the battle for the CIC trophy, Saturday morning, 10 a.m., you can hear the game on our sister station, 740 KVOR. Story number 3, how about a little baseball here? Game 3s, 3 of them today, 1 already in the books. And I haven't been locked into this baseball season. I don't have a rooting interest, but I am glad that Detroit ended up finishing off Cleveland, and that's not anti-Cleveland. With what Detroit did for the vast majority of this season to be on the verge of missing the playoffs entirely. They lost the division. They had to go into Cleveland. I was kind of happy to see the Tigers come through, because that would have been one of the most historically brutal finishes to a season for Detroit to be the best team in maybe in the American League for much of the season, and then cough it away down the stretch, only to either miss the playoffs or get bounced in the first round. But they triumph over Cleveland, and they will move on to play Seattle in the ALDS. We had the Dodgers making light work of the Cincinnati Reds, and now we are set up for Shohei Ohtani's postseason pitching debut against the Philadelphia Phillies, which will be, even as detached as I have grown with baseball, Ohtani on a postseason stage against the Philadelphia Phillies lineup. Yeah, I'll watch that. As far as the other NLDS matchup, it will be Milwaukee, and right now it will be Chicago. But there is still time for the San Diego Padres. Cubs lead it 2-0 in the top of the 7th. Former Rocky great Drew Pomeranz. You remember Drew Pomeranz. He was the big get in the Ubaldo Jimenez trade. He's on the bump for the Cubs here in the 7th, trying to keep San Diego off the board. And then tonight, it will be the Yankees and the Red Sox in Game 3, which obviously will have much attention given the history between those two teams. So Dodgers through. On the NL side, they'll play the Phillies. Tigers through on the AL side. They will play the Seattle Mariners. The other two divisional series matchups still yet to be decided, as O'Hearn flies out to left field, 1 out, top of the 7th. Cubs leading the Padres 2-0. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on the 3 stories that are driving the show. I will take those thoughts and give you my thoughts on San Francisco and LA, why I'm going to be watching. That's next here on Extra Sports 1300. Last time I'm going to tell you the national keyword for the 5K a day, your chance to win $1,000. It is Bill, Bill. Text that to 95819 for your chance to win $1,000. We're doing this 5 times a day, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. It's the 5K a day. See what we did there? On Extra Sports 1300. Text comes in from the 719 regarding Drew Brees. Maybe throwing some shade the Eagles' way, not believing they're the best team in the league, pointing out that CeeDee Lamb had a drop late in the Cowboys game and the Rams had a chip shot field goal that the Eagles blocked. Again, I cannot emphasize this enough. The Eagles blocked the kick. The Rams didn't miss it. It was blocked. The texter says, I'm pretty sure Sean Payton told Brees to say that. When I mentioned at the top of the show, I said I thought Drew Brees was trying to do Sean Payton a solid. I don't know if Sean Payton called the code red here. It's like, hey, Drew, I know Sean Payton has his tentacles in the national media, right? He has his mouthpieces. We know who they are. They will parrot anything that Sean Payton says. I'll leave it at this was Drew Brees doing Sean Payton a solid. I don't think they're the best team in the league. They're a couple of these things away from being 2-2. The Broncos can certainly beat them. Now, he didn't say that, but yeah, I think it was. But we know, too, and Bo Nix is morphing into this. Like Drew Brees, I think Sean Payton's still in Drew Brees' head. I think that's what it is. He's saying things that he knows Sean Payton would like him to say, or believing things that Sean Payton would like him to believe. It's like Bo Nix. Bo Nix, every day that goes by, sounds more and more like Sean Payton. They literally say the same things. It's almost like they rehearse it. I don't think they do. I just think they're of like mind, and that's a good thing. You want the coach and the quarterback on the same page to be thinking the same way, seeing the same things. That's all great. I'm not saying it's a negative. I'm just pointing out that Bo Nix every day says things that we just heard from Sean Payton like 10 minutes before it or a week before it or a day before it. Sean Payton is in the minds of his quarterbacks. That's for sure. I am going to watch tonight's Thursday night football game. And I even think that the 49ers got a shot here. And I'll give you a localized example of what I'm talking about. Remember the Magnificent Seven for the Denver Nuggets when they had only 7 players available and they were able to beat OKC? That's what tonight is for the San Francisco 49ers. I have like 6 minutes left in the show. I don't think I can name all the injured 49ers in 6 minutes. Brock Purdy showed up for one game and now is hurt again. Nick Bosa, every wide receiver that you can possibly think of on the San Francisco 49ers is hurt. Go ahead. Name one San Francisco 49ers wide receiver that's playing tonight. Nope. Not Brandon Ayuk. He's not back yet. Nope. Not Ricky Pearsall. He's hurt. Nope. Not Jawan Jennings. And ironically, if I would have told you that the San Francisco 49ers were as banged up as they were, and I told you that Christian McCaffrey was not one of them, how surprised would you be? You would be very surprised, because I'm surprised. All the injuries that the 49ers have sustained, Nick Bosa, there's another one. All these injuries, and Christian McCaffrey is healthy? This is bizarro world that we are living in. But that's the feeling I have. I'm not going to predict a 49ers win, but the 9.5, I think that LA is favored by is flat out disrespectful. This is a divisional game, which lends itself to be closer. And this is Kyle Shanahan, and this is the 49ers. The 49ers are like Bane. You merely, any team that's dealing with a rash of injuries, the 49ers are saying, you adopted the dark. I was born in it. The San Francisco 49ers live in a world where they are perpetually injured. They are well equipped to handle it. Now, the Rams are really good. Puka Nacua might win himself a triple crown this year. And I thought going into the year, the Rams are the better team, but the idea that this is going to be a blowout, I don't think that way. I think the 49ers, because this is Kyle. It's my guy, Kyle Shanahan. He can do this. And you saw Mac Jones. You see what the Shanahan system does for quarterbacks. And you've seen it with Mac Jones already. They can navigate this game. I don't know if they can win, but I think it will be a game worth watching or more, self-serving listening to right here on Extra Sports 1300. And if the 49ers can get it, it's like the Nuggets' Magnificent Seven win. They will stop just short of hanging a banner. If the 49ers can beat the Rams tonight with how massively shorthanded they are. I think they have a chance. And it's not, and tomorrow, if I'm right and the 49ers don't just keep close, they win this game, I'm not going to dump on the Rams. Okay, because this is just one of those things that we see in sports every once in a while. It doesn't happen all the time. But you look at a game and you look at the injury report and you're like, no way, this game's going to be a laugher. I've got that feeling tonight that the 49ers are going to be able to hang with the Rams. We'll see. Our coverage starts in just a couple minutes here from Westwood One Sports. Want to get this in before I go because this is your last opportunity to vote for our Extra Sports Athlete of the Week. Voting closes at midnight tonight. Your 4 nominees, Landry Roberts of Cheyenne Mountain Volleyball, Jackson Mabe of Palmer Ridge Football, Taylor McCann of Discovery Canyon Softball, and Nathan LeDuc from the Palmer Tennis Team. You could go to extrasports1300.com, cast your vote. We'll try everything in our power to get the winner on tomorrow. And while you're there on extrasports1300.com, please fill out a nomination form so we can help recognize some outstanding student athletes. It's our Athlete of the Week, sponsored by the fine folks at Blackjack Pizza and Salads. That'll be it for today. Appreciate your patronage. I appreciate the interaction. Good conversation today. Hopefully we'll finish out the week strong. More on the Broncos and the Eagles, Air Force, Navy, some CU, TCU talk perhaps, and getting you ready for the football weekend. Enjoy your evening. Coming up right now, it's the Rams and extremely shorthanded San Francisco 49ers here on Extra Sports 1300.